Hello, kindred explorers of the ancient mysteries. This is Govin here with TeutonicShamanism.com. The idea of possession or things like that kind of are a big area of esoteric thought that they already have their mind made up about and they'll dismiss offhand. I'm not asking you to believe in these things that I'm going to discuss in this video in the exact way of what the terms imply, but create whatever metaphors you feel necessary to understand the underlying thing I'm talking about, because I think the same things can apply. Most people can understand the very simple idea that when you have sex with someone, you're opening yourself up to a wide range of things that have to do with them. You're going to be exchanging not just fluids and contact with your skin. There's emotions, there's mental aspects to it. And if we're going to talk about spirituality, there's other things that can be exchanged. Sometimes these are exchanged as an association with a disease, and that kind of gets into a shamanic idea that all diseases have sort of a spiritual aspect that is like an entity. That's why a shaman could potentially heal a disease by clearing a negative entity off someone, or from being attached to someone, or from within someone, and getting it off them and to leave them. But you can certainly also, in theory, get something from someone without a corresponding physical ailment, or there might not be something that drastic associated with it. A book that highly influenced me on the topic early in my teenagehood was by Robert Bruce, and it was titled Practical Psychic Self-Defense. You can always look that up if you're interested in that book to deal with issues that have to do with possession and defense against entities of varying types. And some of the things I might talk about might come from that, and might come from other sources and ideas that I just have in the back of my brain somewhere. But not only can we personify or animate these ideas of things that can become glommed onto us, but we can also simply talk about it as an energy. It doesn't have to have a consciousness in the sense that it's a dynamic interacting thing with a intent and thought, but you might just think of it in terms of like a negative emotional energy. So I think everyone has had, say, a not so savory sexual experience where they didn't feel optimal immediately afterwards or for a while afterwards. And I think the more attuned you are to your own emotions and internal going-ons, the more you can be sensitized to the things that you might pick up from other people, and the more impactful they could be on your life, really throwing you for a loop, throwing you for a spin. And so you need to understand what is going on, because this can give you an attack plan for eliminating these things and clearing them. But let's keep it real. The best way to avoid these things is to not get them in the first place. So generally these things are associated with promiscuity or poor choice in those whom you become sexually involved with, because you can get these from people that you intend and even have a long-term partnership with. Say your partner's an alcoholic or a drug user. You might already have several months or years under your belt of interacting with them, and they do something to attract negative influence into the life, whether emotional or spiritual in the form of an entity, and then through sexual union with them, you're going to potentially pick some of that up. This can feel like a whole wide range of things. If we're talking about just the spiritual emotional, we're not talking about physical ailments that would appear, like lumps under your skin or other things, or even specific diseases. But yeah, the feelings of, one of the most common is pressure in the chest or heaviness and sort of like emotional stagnant energy in the heart or chest area. Personally, in a period of my life, which I've moved on from when I was more promiscuous, this was far too common from just interacting with new people. They might have been perfectly healthy people, but being someone who meditated daily, was very attuned to self-healing and self-development in that sense. The average person, they might not have some horrendous thing going on internally, emotionally. However, because they never do those things, they just don't have any awareness of it, and thus you kind of download that from them into your energetic body. You know, the average person out there who never does any of this kind of development or has some sort of issues bubbling under the surface from various things early on in their life or even more recently in their life, unless they've taken the time to address and clear these, you know, the average person doesn't have much effect from being promiscuous in that sense, because it's like everyone going around that's covered in mud, when they have sex with someone else who's covered in mud, there's no more mud that gets onto one or the other person. I'm not encouraging you to look down on people that don't do self-development, but if someone's meditating and doing the equivalent of washing the mud off themselves, you go and have sex with someone covered in mud, you're going to have a bit of mud on you, if not a lot of mud on you. So the way to deal with it is to either just continue on with your own practices that will get rid of it in time, but the more intense it is, the more you want to deal with it quicker. So you can do additional things, whether it's like an herbal bath. There's all sorts of recipes online to sort of do herbal cleansing baths. You can line it up with the new moon, probably would be more significant than doing it with the full moon. And basically you would draw a bath, follow instructions online. I'm not an expert in doing herbal baths by any means, but anywhere in the realm of 2, 3, 4, 5, even maybe 6 different herbs that apply to cleansing and whatnot. You put the whole herbs into the hot bath, hot as you can do it, and you let it cool down. So that kind of makes it a little bit of a tea in the bath. And you get in, and the properties of the herbs will help cleanse you in that way. You can also do prayers and meditations along with this, or separately, or on their own. There's a whole wide range of different things you can do. Let me just describe some of the most significant experiences I've had. There was someone I once had a brief relationship with who was on antidepressant medication. They weren't noticeably depressed. Their medication seemed to have them as fairly stable. However, I fell into my own depression after interacting with them, and I couldn't go on seeing them. And at first, I had no idea where this came from. I thought I was just depressed about my life. I was getting really negative and down on myself. And it wasn't for a little bit before I realized, oh my God, this is stuff I picked up from this person. I wasn't like that before I met them, and interacting with them and being emotionally connected to them downloaded some of that burden that they were carrying. It's kind of the idea of, as an empathetic person, that you take on someone else's pain to try and lighten their load. You're willing to sort of self-sacrifice in that way. And that's kind of the healer shamanic path, is one has a tendency to do that. Now, you don't want to do that unintentionally. You want to develop the skill to be able to do that when and where you choose if you're going to go down that path of being kind of a healer. So I believe my strategy at the time was to just kind of like up the amount of meditation and energetic work I was doing, and that kind of moves it out of one's sphere of reality pretty quickly. Other experiences I've had would be things like, I don't know if this was associated with an exact possession in the sense of an attachment. People tend to think of possession in this really radical, like you completely black out and you're doing things without any awareness type of thing. And that has been documented as existing, but it's also partly a Hollywoodized perception of possession for the sake of the silver screen. But yeah, minor possession occurs all the time in the sense that you're being influenced and having sort of something hanging around you that is kind of pushing you in different ways and just generally irritating you. Signs of it can be like you think you see an animal in the corner of a room when you know you don't have any pets and there's no animal there. I don't want to make people paranoid, but the point at which it came into your body, often the genitals, you might have had a pricking sensation, or you might have a continual pricking sensation in that one area. Sometimes it's on the feet, even though you might have had sex with someone. It might have entered your body through the feet. We have sort of these energetic absorption spots. That's what Robert Bruce talks about. We have them in our palms, in our genitals, in our mouth, and in our feet. And it's where we take in energy from our environment to process and feed ourselves. Mouth with food, hands, sensory perception and drawing energy, and same thing with the feet. Genitals is sort of the more sexual feeding, sort of the needs we have with our sexuality. So these points are very much almost like drawing points where we're pulling things in. So those are almost like entry points into our body. And if something has gotten inside you or is partly attached to you through there, it can sometimes feel like a pricking sensation, especially when you're more aware of that area. It can almost like fluctuate. Sometimes you don't feel it, sometimes you do feel it. The idea of devils having a pitchfork, Robert Bruce has put forward the idea that this might have come from the feeling of people who are possessed or dealing with a negative influence feel pricking in their feet. So it almost feels like there's an underworld with devils pricking your feet from below with a pitchfork. But really, this is just the draw-in point, so that is an easy access point, as opposed to an entity trying to enter you through your arm in terms of your energetic matrix and all that. So part of dealing with this is, like I said, developing yourself, working on yourself through whatever practices you're drawn to doing. Could be Qigong, yoga, meditation. The energy work Robert Bruce talks about I found very useful. It's not a daily practice for me. It's more of something I use to heighten the sensations in my energy body. And I'll stick a link below with a description of that practice if you want to play around with it. It's called New Energy Ways. He's had that out for quite a while. And it's very useful for, kind of breaking these attachment points. You don't need to go through these visualizations of cutting cords and whatnot. I find the tactile sensation, because it is a literal pricking sensation, you may as well work on the tactile level as opposed to the visual level. Our sense of touch is, in my opinion, much more honed than people's visual perception. So a lot of people have trouble visualizing things, but they can do much better when they actually just focus on the tactile sensation. So energy work that really focuses on the tactile creates more visceral sensations. We look for the feeling of energy moving in our body, or energy being stored, or energy fluctuating in our body in some way. Just simply visualizing it doesn't give much evidence of it having an effect unless you visualize it and then feel something. So that's the interesting thing with Robert Bruce's New Energy Ways, is it works on the tactile level. Now, there's a lot of strategies for more serious issues. Robert Bruce talks about that in Practical Psychic Self-Defense, but you can also look on his website, Astrodynamics, which you can find from the New Energy Ways link. You just search around for this. There's a lot of other authors that talk about these things, but that kind of summarizes my experiences with it. I've had a lot of weird experiences with things I've picked up from people, whether I was sexually involved with them or not. Another prominent one that comes to mind is involving the mouth is sort of like two canker sores that appeared on my inner lip here and here on both. It was almost like the snake bite piercings, except my lips aren't pierced, and it was just on the back side. And it was two raised bumps that came and stayed for weeks. And I had to do energy work. And then when I felt like I'd actually broken through and cleared whatever it was I picked up, those things went away right away. And that's another thing that can happen, is entry points or points of feeding from a negative entity of some kind, whether it's drawing energy from you. It kind of sounds really ominous. But a lot of these things can be likened to a psychic parasite. They're not necessarily some extreme, malevolent, all-powerful demon. You need to really kind of tone down that extreme idea that is created by Hollywood largely, and think of these more in the varying terms of what's most likely to occur. Is you have picked up something from someone that is a pretty low-level entity. If it is even an entity at all, it could be purely emotional energy, psychic energy, but it's attached to you, and it could be nothing more than like a psychic mosquito or a psychic tapeworm if it's a little more serious. And that point of entry, when you kind of break that, then it's forced to be expelled from you, and you feel good. You feel like it's gone, and you kind of have this elation wash over you, which feels pretty nice in and of itself. So that's one view of what one can pick up from other people, especially when you become very intimate with them. And it's not always meaning that they're a bad person. It certainly does not mean it all across the board, because most people simply do not hold these practices, and thus you, as someone that may be more honed in, or maybe you're just born with an inborn higher level of empathy than them, it's kind of like osmosis. Two people come together, and if there's something going on with one person and it's not going on with that person, it kind of gets shared back and forth. So perhaps that's a hurdle that you're just going to experience with a partner. Maybe you have a really great connection with someone, and it's going to be a long-term relationship, but that first bit of interacting with them, you're going to experience these things, and you have to kind of clear it within yourself. And in that way, you're inadvertently helping them, because you're basically taking the burden off them that they didn't even know they had and clearing it yourself. And again, that kind of comes around to this idea of shamanism, where you're absorbing someone else's issues, and then because you have the skills to get rid of it, you get rid of it. I don't recommend intentionally doing that, but when it does happen, you need the skills to be able to get rid of it, so that it doesn't alter your life in negative ways that, then becomes a bigger problem down the road. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little further out there than the ones I've even started to do on this channel, and you can kind of see with the topic why I wanted to make a separate channel in the end rather than just posting these videos, 2 Secrets of Longevity. And, I'll be talking about things like this, but more sort of academic-sided, historical types of things as well. And I'd love to hear your feedback on the topic as well. So with that, take care, and may your gods, allies, and ancestors be with you.